Allie.
Hello, Dave.
Welcome to the What Difference Does It Make podcast, ? And the reason I say that is because who do we have in the neighborhood?
We have guests today that have their own podcast, which is also a question. And that question is, who cares about the Rock Hall?
Well, apparently, Joe Kwaczala and Kristen Studard do. And we do too. We talk a lot about the Rock Hall. And I thought this month is like the Rock Hall month of Rocktober, which we call it. They call it something else. I won't get into it right now. It is a topic of discussion constantly on our podcast, as well as theirs.
It's a little more constant on theirs. We talk about Rock Hall inductees and nominees often, but they have a whole podcast about that topic.
It's their obsession is the Rock Hall. It's intriguing into how they look into what goes into each nominee, who gets in, who gets out. It's fascinating, and we are fascinated by these guys.
And by the way, they're very funny. Joe is a stand-up comedian, and Kristen does improv, and she's an actor.
They are highly entertaining. We are going to open up our studios now into the virtual studios. Let's welcome Joe Kwaczala and Kristen Studard of Who Cares About the Rock Hall podcast, ? On the What Difference Does It Make podcast, ? It's Kristen Studard, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
yes.
like Ruben.
Like Ruben, but
yeah.
spelled a little bit biff.
Oh, Lil, okay.
Yeah, he has two D's.
He's got double D's.
He's got, that is
He's got,
what they say.
Oh.
Joseph.
All right. Yeah, so that must have been crushing when Ruben Studard came around, and all of a sudden it's like, oh.
Yeah, it has continued. It is
Yeah, because he hasn't gone away. He's still
he's relevant. People are talking about him all the time.
Rock Hall.
Related.
He'll be in the Rock Hall eventually, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Put him in with Sponge and
Smash Mouth.
The Bloodhound Gang.
What about Smash Mouth? He just retired. Did you hear about this guy?
Retired. Did you see the video?
I really did not want to see it because I heard it was disturbing.
It's sad. Someone on TikTok was like, and they even acknowledged, they were like, the ethics of sharing this is maybe not great, but here's what I saw at a Smash Mouth concert recently, and it was the dude just like drunk and like mumbling into the microphone and being like, so I'll fucking kill your whole family. I don't care. And just like throwing the beer cans on the ground, and like a woman just like comes up and takes the mic, and he's like, he looks like he's in bad shape. And I think the like that video going public, he had to make a choice about that's maybe rock bottom, a rock bottom situation for that guy.
Well, who cares about the Rock Bottom Hall? Yeah. He's in it.
But although I did hear, you heard about when David Cassidy was really sick. He had a situation like that. People thought he was drunk, but it was like an illness. Yeah. It was at the Canyon Club. You could pull that one up too if you're into watching disturbing videos.
Falling off the stage.
Well, the Smash Mouth guy definitely had beer cans.
Oh, really?
Hand.
Okay.
So
there was no doubt.
I can't make an assumption, but there were clues.
All right.
Do you think that was really true about David Cassidy, Dave?
I think he passed away. It was like within that year he passed away, and he had mentioned I think he had retired right after that performance too. It's like I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Maybe I should already know this, but where did your love or your passion for the Rock Hall come from, Joe? I'm asking because
it was clear where that question was directed. I am the VH1 list generation. When I was coming of age. And if you wanted to know about rock and roll and like the history of rock and maybe why you might want to love the 80s or 90s or other decades, that was like so available. And I watched a lot of that stuff and like really consumed it. And I became kind of like a classic rock head. And then also VH1 at that time would air the induction ceremonies. So I was taking that in as well. It was all kind of part of this education about the history of music. So it was all part of it to me. And also, my dad is from Cleveland, so I have relatives there. So we would go to the museum every year, like around my like spring break or whatever. That was my spring break.
Yeah. Oh God.
and the museum was really cool for, say, like a 13-year-old in the early 2000s when Wikipedia isn't quite a thing and you don't have like every rock doc at your fingertips because there's no streaming services. So going to the Rock Hall was like a true education. It was very, very cool. You know, I didn't know until much later that like, oh, nobody pays attention to the Rock Hall. I just, I happen to have all this knowledge about it. And then, you know, I leaned into it with a podcast and made Kristen join me.
And also, as you got older, I think you were like, oh, I have all this knowledge, like accidentally or whatever. It was like a thing that you kind of built upon. And then you're like, well, I might as well just keep knowing about it. Or did you like it? Like,
no, I mean, like, it wasn't like, well, I guess I'm on this road. No, it was like, I have the genuine interest in it. And then, yeah, I think there was a time where I was like not really paying attention. And then I came back to it and was like, oh, I recognize the appeal of it almost from like a sports fan angle of like, oh, there's seasons to this. There's like the nominee list comes out and then who gets inducted and then who shows up at the induction ceremony and then the broadcast of the ceremony. And like, you know, Future Rock Legends is a website where they have all this data that you can spend hours just like clicking around and seeing like, how many times was Chic nominated and like who was nominated this year and didn't get in, how many, you know, this, that, who's not and who's never been nominated, all that stuff. So it appealed to a certain part of my brain. And so, yeah, I stand.
Okay. So Paul Scheer is your idol, right? This is who you went to for your rock knowledge based on the VH1 specials. Cause he was always on there.
Yeah. I was like, was it Paul Scheer, Paul F. Tompkins?
Yeah. Paul, yeah. Who else? It was those guys.
I mean, not to get, too in the weeds, but that's more the best week ever. You know, this was
my apologies.
Who was on the I Love the 80s?
It was like
John.
It was Michael Ian Black was a huge mainstay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hal Sparks.
Yes.
Like Rachel Harris.
Yes.
Those were the ones that they used a lot.
The Gen X alt comedy like scene.
And then sprinkled throughout, you'd get like a Lisa Loeb, you know,
Yeah.
You'd get like a Lita Ford. You know, you'd get some actual musicians and stuff.
We haven't introduced Joe and their podcast. We haven't talked about it. We do that afterwards, but, you know, because we edit.
Yeah.
So it's Joe Kwaczala, right? Is that Kwaczala? You must have been in high school. They called you Kwaczala, right? Kwaczala, what's up?
Nobody wanted to even approach me.
Oh, okay.
And also nobody wanted to approach him, period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I got
had
you.
a
Everyone was afraid.
body odor problem.
So the first thing that attracted me to your podcast is you also ask a question. We ask, what difference does it make? And you ask, who cares about the Rock Hall? Question mark.
titled.
Like, I'm not sure why are we doing this? I don't know. Who cares? Or what difference does it make? What, you know, we're just doing this. So
wait, Kristen does care about the Rock Hall. Do you really care about the Rock Hall?
Does Kristen, okay, your final answer,
Hi.
does Kristen, do you care about it?
Okay, here I would say reluctantly, passively, yes. I care now. I'm a generalist at heart, and by nature, I don't obsess about many things. I don't tend to drill down on extensive knowledge about things. And this show has forced me to do that. So I've become a de facto expert. People often come on our show and are like, so you two probably know more than almost anyone about the history of the Rock Hall. And it might be true unless you count Future Rock Legends. He's number one.
You are now up there. Like just by
I'm in like top 20 experts on the Rock and Roll Hall
against your will. Yeah.
Against my will. So yeah, I don't know if we stopped doing the show, if I would continue to care. Probably, I don't know that I'd continue following it if I didn't have a reason to. But
you would, if like news came out, you would be activated like a sleeper cell. Like, you know, you would, like, suddenly have a lot to say.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is I find myself, people find out I have this podcast. I don't lead with it, but people find out and then they want to engage me. And I find myself having to like define what is rock and roll anyway, and what does it, and like, I'm out here making the case for something that I don't even like that much. But I think that's what works about it and us.
All right.
And the show.
So we know a little bit about Joe, and what's your story?
I grew up in Chicago and I did improv and comedy there. And then I moved to LA and I do improv and comedy here. And
Did
Joe
you-
and I used to do a sketch group together. And then we started a podcast.
And improv in Chicago, that's where everyone gets their
Good
start.
place.
Is there?
Yeah,
Why
that
did you
was the
leave?
place.
Why
Why did I leave? There is only so far one can go. You kind of hit the ceiling there. If you want to do more I took my talents to Los Angeles.
But now you're taking
Yeah.
both of you are taking your talents to Cleveland
It's true.
for a one night only engagement. How did this come about?
It felt like the right place, right time. Like we have never done a live podcast. And, it's something we've thought about before. And it feels like in Cleveland, the night before the induction ceremony, that's when and where you got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No better opportunity. That's great. That should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it'll be our second time attending a ceremony. I'm curious to see how my feelings have changed and grown. We'll find out. Because the first time we went, I was like, this is going to be long and it's going to be boring. And it was, but I also had a good time, And I feel like this year the inductees are going to be like so much more exciting to me. I'm like genuinely looking forward to it. Although I hope that they all show up.
Well, one is not showing up.
Yeah,
for sure.
Todd is not showing, and it's not looking good on Tina either.
We talked to Alec Whiteman, who is on the board of the Rock Hall, and he said Tina's not showing up. She's under the weather.
She's got her own life.
She's got
a very nice life in Switzerland.
Yeah. She did her farewell documentary. She's getting her laurels. She's fine.
So which other ceremony did you see?
We went to the one 2 years ago in New York, and it was Def Leppard, The Cure, Radiohead, Janet Jackson, the Roxy Music, and who else was it? The Zombies. Joe did a physical clue.
I was going to go.
It's the correct month. It's the wrong month for me to forget about the Zombies.
Right.
Yeah. But it was and it was a fun ceremony.
Stevie Nicks.
Oh yeah. And Stevie Nicks. Yeah. There was seven
that year.
It was a decent class, but it was like one of those ceremonies that kind of, there's always some fat in the ceremony. Although last year was supposed to be, it's not going to be live this year, right, Joe?
No, it will not.
They had that, right?
They had toyed with the idea of broadcasting it live last year, but then obviously the pandemic, they had to pivot to just doing a almost documentary style induction.
Yeah.
Which do you think that kept it tighter and more interesting for everyone, or do you like?
Certainly kept it tighter.
Tighter, yeah. More interesting is very debatable. What do you find interesting?
It was definitely a different vibe. Vibe.
Have you gone back to see all the induction ceremonies? I mean, I'm sure most of them are available, but
I mean, I have my ways, and I've definitely made Kristen watch a lot of them. There was a whole.
I've seen quite a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Mike Love then? Have you seen that one?
I mean, like that. The Mike Love speech comes up a lot on our show.
Oh,
and
does
Kristen,
it?
Did you ever finally watch it?
I've still never seen it.
We just talk about it.
If you
a lot.
ever assign it to me and I need to talk about it, I'll watch it.
I do this with Holly too. I'll give her an assignment and then she just blows it off. It's never going to happen.
I do my homework. I do my homework if I have to, but I don't, like I said, I'm a generalist and proud of it. The Mike Love speech, though, is that the one where he says that someone won't fight him?
I mean, he challenges Mick Jagger to
he challenges Mick Jagger to a fist fight or something.
Not exactly
right?
not a fight, but more like he's like, I'd like to see Mick Jagger get up here and sing I Get Around. Like, I bet he can't. Like, but he's always been too chicken shit to go toe to toe with the Beach Boys.
Also, what a hilarious flex.
Right?
I Get Around.
Right. Yeah.
I'd actually like to see the Beach Boys sing Satisfaction.
Right.
What are we doing here?
What year was this?
88.
Yeah, it was one of the first ones. Yeah. It was,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Was that at the Waldorf then? So is there footage of it?
There is footage,
or is it
but
just
it was
audio?
there is footage, and it was like
it's on the first camera phone. It's on a car phone.
It's on a
They recorded it for posterity, but not for TV. So there's footage of every ceremony, but those early ones, it was not produced. So it's sloppy.
We like to call this month Rocktober, but you guys just go way off into another stratosphere.
No obvious puns here. The puns must
only
be our
terrible
stretch. They must be a
Your
stretch.
puns
so-
are great.
Thank you.
I don't know. Holly is always the positive one, but I don't know about these. Let's go over a few of these, shall we?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we can start. We started in June doing bad pun theme months.
Early.
Let me see if I can remember them.
Okay, go ahead.
Early influence,
Yes,
Okay.
which is where we devoted the month
which
to
is
the
what
early
we talked about,
influence
early
category.
influences.
Yes.
And that was actually maybe of all of these, that one, no, they're all terrible. They're horrible. Fu Lai, which was an entire 5-week month
She closed her
dedicated to
eyes.
the Foo Fighters. I and tried not to go back there. And then what was August?
All right. So
Oh,
wait a second. I love Dave Grohl, but I'm not a Foo Fighters fan. Are you like the same way, or what? Or is it just anything to do with the Foo Fighters? It's a struggle.
It was 5 weeks that didn't. It was too long for me. My feelings about the Foo Fighters are that I think they are a good band. I don't think they're like a legendary band. I think that they get more credit because they're one of the last kind of alternative rock bands of our era. And I was disappointed, but not surprised that they got in on their first ever ballot. Like,
Yeah.
I think they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but I just don't necessarily think they deserve like legend status. I think Dave Grohl, he plays the game. He's everybody's fun rock uncle. And, he doesn't seem like a bad guy. He doesn't have any like, there's no secret tapes or emails of him being problematic. And that in and of itself, I guess, is enough for me to think he's all right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Joe feels differently
Joe?
if you did 5 different episodes of the Foo Fighters.
I
No,
mean,
he was trying to drag me crazy.
Yeah, you gotta remember that like doing these bad puns and like the way I will structure our show sometimes is specifically to elicit a reaction from Kristen. So
Okay.
if I'm looking at a 5-week month and I'm like, what is my theme gonna be? Like to do the Foo Fighters for 5 weeks in a row is very funny to me.
It is rude.
And
It's
Say, what's
uncalled
Kristen's
for.
worst nightmare?
Yeah, I've been known to prank Kristen. I've
Yep.
been known to do what I can to.
This is the
get
fun
under his
dynamic
skin.
the fans come for. They live
what they
for
love.
it.
It's what
They
they
love
love.
to watch me be annoyed. It's a hallmark of the show.
Keeps it interesting.
You're a happy annoyed person.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get angry on the show as well, but mostly I'm pretty upbeat. Although I am kind of the mean one sometimes. Like I'm the one who I will say the ruder or mean thing. Joe tends to be more of a fan.
Huh.
Right. Yeah. You'll go off. as
Yeah,
they say.
I will go off. I'm not afraid to pop off
Oh,
with absolutely no research. Just
Was that you popping off about the Foo Fighters?
at this point, I am just bereft. I have no feeling left about the Foo Fighters. I'm like, every once in a
wrung
while,
dry.
I'll remember occasionally that like I like some of their songs, and then they'll put like new ones out, and I'll be like, we got to stop this. And also, it's just kind of one of those things where like they're inoffensive. Like it's hard to work up a well of anger about the Foo Fighters other than like the idea that they are equivalent to like the other bands that got in on their first year eligible is like not true. It's like, oh yeah, they're not as good as Nirvana. They are not as good as like who else gets in on their first year
the
eligible?
Beatles.
Jay-Z.
the Beatles. Oh,
Well, the Beatles were not like they were there in the first class, but the Beatles like 25 years after to be eligible.
I mean, they got in first year eligible, and it was the third year, 88.
Oh wow! I guess I don't even think about. I'm like, I just feel like they were not eligible when the hall started.
No. See, there's still so much to learn.
She's
You can
still
talk about this
learning.
Get out of here!
for like 300 hours and still.
Good God! No,
So
I'm
wait,
good.
Joe, about the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of the sentiments that Kristen said. The thing is, like, can I get mad at a band that I like 15 of their songs? Like, that's a lot of songs. Like, they pretty consistently would put out an album that had 2 or 3 great songs once every few years for 25 years. What Kristen said is right. And when you think about it in the context of the way the hall operates, Radiohead did not get in on their first year of eligibility, for example. And so then to say Foo Fighters get in on their first year and Radiohead doesn't, it makes you go, all right, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's like the Foo Fighters are not an innovative rock band. They are a competent and good hard rockin' band that does a good job. They are
they're built for tough is what you're saying.
Exactly.
They're persistent, they're resilient. And that is those are some of the great qualities of that band is, we have not seen them live. We will be seeing them live, obviously, at the induction concert.
And
we're probably going to be,
so it's going to be great.
So Holly, go ahead. And Holly was at the forum. Go ahead and tell them your.
Oh, yeah?
I was always a fan. I like them, but I've always wanted to see them because I've heard they put on a great show. They put on such a fabulous show, and he's so not just you get the genuine. I mean, he's really genuine. I mean, whether he is, I don't know, but he feels genuine, and the musicians are great, and while you may not love the kind of rock that it is, there's no denying that they have a place. And this leads me to a whole other topic about that. Not the Foo Fighters, but about the Rock Hall and the, what it takes. It seemed, having learned a lot more about it recently. I mean, I always paid attention, but I never was, really well versed in it. Sorry, I'm kind of segueing from the Foo Fighters.
Sure.
I hope you guys love them when you see them.
We're going to. We're not like haters.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I love them more now, and I really respect them. And of course, Dave Grohl he's known to be a good guy. But the criteria, we've learned a little bit more about it, speaking to, as Dave said, Alec Whiteman, who's on the board, about the voting and about how members come to the table with their artists. And I'm assuming that they have to defend them. They put them all out there, but it seems so like it's almost intangible without any specific criteria.
Oh yeah. You kind of hit to the core of our show.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things I've done to help try and define this undefinable thing and to try and kind of laser focus in on what makes a good inductee. One of the things we do on our show is focus on an artist and go through criteria that I have kind of reverse engineered, because they don't say anything outside of it's they changed the world or whatever. And it's like that, just give me something tangible. So what I put together was okay, I think you need, and you don't need to have everything in every category, but if you do well enough in them, maybe cumulatively, you have a good shot at getting in the traditional way, at getting voted in by the larger voting body. And the categories I have are recognizable songs, classic albums, critical acclaim, commercial success, longevity, influence, artistry/skill, and my last category, maybe the most important one, does my mom know who they are?
Yeah.
I think you look at any inductee any year, and they'll do relatively well in those categories.
Now, with longevity, do you mean they're still relevant now? Like the Go-Go's put out 3 albums, Guns N' Roses put out four records.
Exactly. How long was their kind of imperial phase? Is that the phrase?
Sure.
How long was their imperial phase and how impactful was it? So it's some bands are still putting out albums, but they're putting out albums that people aren't buying or listening to, or that aren't making as much of an impact as those 3 Guns N' Roses albums.
And also speaking of the Foo Fighters, I think longevity is one of the categories where the Foo Fighters does really well, because they have had a career that has spanned 25 years and counting. There was no break. And then you talk about the Go-Go's. Yeah, the Go-Go's had 3 albums, kind of burned bright and fast. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why it took a long time for them to finally get in. I think if they had a longer career, it would have been more of a layup.
We're having a Rocktober party with Joe Kwaczala and Kristen Studard of the Who Cares About the Rock Hall podcast. As we do on podcasts, we take breaks. So we're going to do that at this very moment.
We're back on the What Difference Does It Make podcast with Joe Kwaczala and Kristen Studard of the Who Cares About the Rock Hall podcast.
let's lead into your next month, because we talked with Gina Schock. In her mind, it was the documentary. You have August became, what was it? August is Doggett. Like rocking like Dockist.
Doesn't it just roll right off the tongue? Couldn't have been like Augustumentary or I mean, who knows?
That's better.
It's not. There isn't a good one. It was a bad pun, and there was no way around it. And you did.
It was a good month, though. We got to watch.
It was a
good
month.
Yeah,
we talked to a lot of editors.
No, but that was great, and I think that seems to like Tina came out with her documentary and the Go-Go's, and
Clarence Avant.
So it seems to really help.
Yeah, there's definitely a documentary effect that happens, if not immediately, eventually. And the Go-Go's one.
I think that's what kind of the Nina Simone kind of
right.
that.
Yeah,
I think
that was maybe a little bit of a delayed
her.
effect, but like for sure helped her out. And going into like our predictions, our draft for who we thought the nominees were going to be, we all had the Go-Go's at the top of our list because of the documentary. Like they were clearly
only
in
one
the
of
zeitgeist.
us got them.
That's true. That is true.
In their draft.
Who would that be?
No, actually, it was neither of us. It was neither of us. Because we both wisely picked, Kristen picked Jay-Z.
I picked Jay-Z.
Because we those were like, that's the thing is like, if you follow this stuff, you kind of know to some degree what's going to happen. And knowing that the Go-Go's had such a big year with that documentary.
I also 100% thought I picked the Go-Go's when I said that. I do not remember who I drafted at all. Who won?
I have
did
the
you win
list.
the draft, Joe?
Ultimately, I won.
Okay.
Yeah. I had Tina and the Foo Fighters.
I truly do not remember who I drafted. I know I had Jay-Z, but I thought I might have also had the Go-Go's.
I was looking at the nominees this year, and there were 1, 2,
16.
3, 4, 5,
16,
6, 7, 8. So there were 9 that did not get in. Who got ripped off this year? Was it TiVo or Kate Bush? Or
I mean, we were not expecting either of those to get in. We think Dionne Warwick is the one who
was
really
the edge.
Could have. And we called voters. We got out the vote and we tried to get Dionne the votes because we knew she could use them, and it did. We fell short. But
and that's she's another kind of case where also she doesn't have necessarily she needs one. If anybody out there is listening and it's coming out
soon. I mean, like it's like doing the festival rounds, I think, at this point.
All right, I'm keeping that in mind for the draft next year, because if she can get a documentary out there, I think all the work she was doing on Twitter, kind of like becoming more of a public figure to younger people, could really. We thought that was going to help her, and I mean, I think that's what got her on the ballot this year, because she hadn't been on for
she'd never been on.
It was her tweeting, apparently, right?
Yeah, it was Twitter.
I think so. Whether it's a documentary or like no one's done this before, but have like a huge, very like well maintained social media presence. Like there's a new way, and like Dionne Warwick should have gotten in 30 years ago. You know what I mean? Like that's absurd.
Like if Tina Turner is in and Dionne Warwick, it's just kind of like you find yourself doing these reverse engineers into like, well, if this person's in and that one's not in, what are we doing? It's like what happened with LL Cool J this year is he didn't get in through the front door. He's in through a side category, but it's like at a certain point, you can't keep inducting newer rappers and not put in one of the most formative rappers after he's been nominated 7 times. Joe?
Yeah.
6.
7.
So did that raise your eyebrows when you're like, all right, Jay-Z gets in as a performer, and then LL Cool J is the Musical Excellence Award. Can you explain the Musical Excellence Award? What is that?
Yeah.
Oof,
do you want me? I would be a fun challenge to see if you could do it, but if we want to just be efficient, I can go.
I'm like, because it has meant so many things, it has meant,
and we spent.
Also, I'm trying to remember the pun. September excellence.
Oh, that's
it. Yeah.
Was that it? September excellence.
We spent all of September excellence on the musical excellence category, which is an interesting one for the Hall because it started out as the sideman category. You wouldn't know that if you looked at the Rock Hall's website, because they have just pretended like all of those were always musical excellence, but really it was called sideman, and that's where they inducted people who played on a lot of classic songs like Hal Blaine or Earl Palmer or James Jamerson.
So the E Street Band got in under the sideman?
Well, it had become musical excellence by then, but they are in this category. Okay. So at a certain point, they chose to changed the name sideman to musical excellence. And it felt like they were shifting the focus from the people who were kind of behind the scenes to some of the people who were a little more visible. Like Leon Russell was the first musical excellence category under that banner. And he is a session musician. He is a sideman, but he also obviously had a very successful solo career and was a very visible musician and artist. And then they used that category for people like the E Street Band. Again, they're sidemen, but they're very known. All those guys are, characters and personalities. And then around 2015, they inducted Ringo in that category. And it just felt like, okay, this seems like a way.
And all hell has broken loose. What does musical excellence mean?
Yeah. And so at that point, and Ringo did play on other people's records and stuff, not really in a significant way. And the rumor was Paul McCartney had said, having seen that he and John Lennon and George Harrison had all been inducted solo, why not Ringo? And I think instead of putting Ringo on the ballot, they were just like, we can put him in this category we created that has such a vague qualification for it. We just put him in there. Musical excellence. Sure. Musical excellence.
Joe,
Great.
We've talked about this, and I'm just realizing, though, that I've never asked this, though. Do you think that Ringo, he would have gotten in if they had put him on the ballot? Do you
Probably.
think that they thought it would have been a disservice and like taken a spot away from someone else to add Ringo to the ballot? Because he would absolutely, it would have been a Stevie Nicks effect. Like he would have gotten in.
You see him on the ballot.
Solo. You see him on the ballot. You're like legend, no problem. Beatle.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if the nominating committee was just never going to do that, because I do think the nominating committee have some principles, and like, I if you can believe it.
But the subcommittee for musical excellence doesn't.
Yeah, I think so. I think you get fewer people involved. You get fewer people who have to sign off on it.
Got it.
It makes sense.
But yeah, I guess it's like Paul McCartney called about Ringo. I'm sure Elton John made a phone call to get Leon Russell.
Yeah, exactly. So and Bruce Bruce and his manager. I mean, John Landau is heavily involved with the hall and its goings on. So, I mean, like the E Street Band, that was a foregone conclusion. Little Steven also very involved. So it's like, duh, that's of course that's gonna happen.
It's interesting. It's almost just like, I don't know. A lot of these big institutions just thrive on corruption. I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't hear me saying that every week, but like, it just does seem that way.
The musical excellence category this year, it has now every phase of this category. It has like the classic sideman definition through Randy Rhoads, who played with Ozzy Osbourne. It's got the kind of new Leon Russell-y type definition with Billy Preston, who was a sideman, but also, had his own career. Yeah, I mean, he played with the Beatles, played with the Stones.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But also, had a lot of great songs as a solo artist. And then it has the third tier of definition, which is, well, we got to induct him, so we might as well use the category. And that's where they're putting LL Cool J.
Is there a limit as to how many can go into the performer category? I mean, why not just put LL in there?
There are no limits. They could have done anything, and this is what they chose to do.
Well, the only thing with the performer category is you have to get votes. So maybe they're looking at that seventh inductee and they're going, okay, do we want to make space for the New York Dolls, or do we want to give that space to these side categories that we can personally curate to make the class that we want to make?
Do you think that's who was the next on the ballot? Do you think that's who the next vote getter would have been?
Yeah, I think so. I think
that's what you think.
What was that again? That you think?
Oh, I mean, like if we're speculating about who was in the
seventh slot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because they are inducting 6 through the front door this year, and the 7th. It's like usually, if the 7th is someone that they've really been working to get in, that they've been really wanting to,
and it's close enough in the votes.
It's close enough. They will sometimes go to 7. And this year they only did 6. So I was like, sometimes you have to wonder too, if there's it's like the top 6 vote getters got similar numbers of votes, or someone ran away with the number 1, but 2 through 6 are pretty similar, and then there's a big space in between 7 maybe. I don't know, I've never seen the numbers.
I was hoping to get more clarity from you.
Yeah,
guys,
I know you're
just a little more confused.
Oh, it's an opaque and shadowy institution.
Okay, just to throw a little bit more into my confusion.
Yeah.
How does this fan voting play into it?
Unfortunately, it doesn't mean a thing. It is
Who won this year?
I will explain the fan vote.
Okay.
This is a thing that I've learned through my 3 years of doing this show, which is that the fan vote is so insignificant and it's really unfortunate. I think that the fans get an outsized sense of importance when the polling is live online. And then at the end of all of those many hundreds of thousands of votes that are cast over the month, I don't know how many or however many weeks or months that the voting is available, those top 5 votes just make up one ballot out of several hundred voters. So it's several thousand over
around 1,000.
Around 1,000. So around 1,000. So it's like 1/1,000th of one fifth of 1/1,000th is what it means.
Oh, wow.
In the long run. It is incredibly insignificant, but trend wise, I can't believe I really do know. I'm sounding so expert. It's freaking me out. But trend wise, usually used to be up until last year, right?
Up until the Dave Matthews debacle.
Up until the Dave Matthews debacle, the debacle Matthews.
Oh, we'll have to talk about that right after this, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the debacle is that basically Dave Matthews Band far and away 2 years ago, ran away with the fan vote and did not get in. They were the number one fan vote getter, but it doesn't matter. They just got 1/10th of 1,000, whatever the math is. Don't make me do it. But, and people were like, this is outrageous. We vote for Dave every day, and who was it this year, Joe? I know Fela Kuti was doing well.
I was about to say Fela Kuti was.
Fela Kuti and Tina Turner both got a lot. And I don't know who ended up ultimately being number one. It was neck and neck between them. But yeah, I mean, Fela Kuti did not get in this year, even though the troops had been mobilized. The entire country of Nigeria had voted for him multiple times. But, that's what happens. Although the reason Kristen notes Dave Matthews is from the beginning of the fan vote, which was 2013 or something, every time the number one vote getter would be inducted. And that was a correlation, that wasn't a cause and effect thing. Mm-hmm. But I think people saw that and they were like, well, it matters.
We got it. All right. Def Leppard Hive activate, and they got out there.
But it's insignificant.
Some might say.
And the hall, though, really, they advertise it as you have a voice. Yeah. You can make a difference. Yeah. And the answer is no, you can't. Yeah. No, you can't. You might even say, what difference does it make?
Whoa. We're not going on the record saying that voting doesn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
As a blanket statement, you'd never hear that from me.
Is this how it works in the United States, right? We
get just the system is actually too broken and your vote doesn't matter. Uh-oh.
If there was a local rock hall, vote in your local rock hall.
Vote your local rock hall.
Yeah.
Vote your
rock hall city council.
Yeah, your rock hall city council, your rock hall school board, get involved.
Absolutely.
Well, Fela Kuti, he could have gone in early influence, or can they? I mean, is that a thought?
They put in Kraftwerk and Gil Scott Heron as early influences. So it's the meaning of these categories, especially this year, when they've really chosen to utilize them to kind of scrape the backlog of snubs. Yeah, absolutely. Fela could be musical excellence. He could be early influence. They can make up a new category for him called the International Award. It's yeah, and they probably will, because I don't see him going in through.
Yeah, me too. And to me, this Fela nomination felt almost like a test balloon. Do you know what I'm saying? They would just wanted to see how people would respond and kind of what the votes would be, and kind of just see if it was possible. But I don't see it's such an American leaning and led institution. It's really, I don't see that happening front doorway.
It's like Americans discovering that soccer is actually really popular around the world.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, right.
People.
That's not football.
Yeah.
We have football.
We have football.
Yeah, we're Americans, and football is football. Yeah. I think Kraftwerk came in because we had talked with Annie Zaleski, who's she's okay, you know her, also from Cleveland. Yeah, but we were talking about Devo. I've been pushing for Devo. I desperately want them in, but she was like, I think Kraftwerk's going to kind of sneak in there, and that's kind of okay, that's kind of a nod that Devo might come in next. But
I think Devo will get in eventually. Joe,
Yeah,
you think
me too.
so? I think
I do.
so. I mean,
it's
based
been
on
tough, but like they've gone up against some stiff competition,
and I think we're getting some kind of the art rock with the Roxy Music induction and stuff. I think that we're headed in that direction. And that is just the closer we get to the B-52s getting inducted, the better for me.
Okay, so you're
I think
Yes. I listened to your last one with Roy Trakin, and you were
Taking care
talking
of
about
business.
Diva.
yes, we did. Yeah, Devo came up.
although this is not the month of Devo. What month is this?
Oh,
This is-
well, we are in Toddtober.
we're in October, if you ask me.
Yeah,
sorry.
we're warring puns.
Warring
But
puns over here.
Roy's a big Todd fan, and we had talked to Roy about Todd Rundgren years ago, and we were remastering that episode and re-releasing it with some new conversation.
Yeah, and we famously accidentally talked Roy out of voting for Devo, and we live to regret it because he wasted a vote on Tina Turner.
Now, okay,
That's
so
what we
you
want.
actually, if I remember correctly, you had people voting during your podcast. Is that
Oh yeah, we
Like-
probably had six. We all told got the ballots. I think of about 16 people, and then in terms of who we got to actually vote on air, I want to say around 10 or so. A lot of people we talked to, well, not a lot, but some people we talked to. had already filled out
1%
their
of
ballot.
voters, 1% of Hall voters,
which is
voted
bigger than
on our show,
which is bigger than the fan vote?
Which is bigger than the fan
Yeah.
vote.
It's actually
Yeah.
10 times as important.
Yeah, it's 10 times as important to do a ballot on our show than it is to fill out the online poll.
Anyone a baseball fan or familiar with the Baseball Hall of Fame? Like it's
People bring it up on our show.
We'll bring it up on our
sometimes.
show all the time because it's like stats based, right?
yeah, but they're very specific. Like a lot of great players do not get into the Hall of Fame. I'm still bitter about a few Dodgers
And
that
you
aren't in there.
can
but-
you can lose eligibility, right?
after a certain time, yeah, you're like tossed
Right.
out. So it's tough. I think they've invented this new category, like where you can kind of sneak in. But yeah,
Sideman.
but it's very tough.
Yeah,
and do you,
exactly.
shit. I mean, initially the Rock Hall, I think, kind of took this fine line of like, okay, we're going to be very specific about who gets into the Rock Hall, and now it's kind of all right. Come on in, come
a
all.
free-for-all.
Journey is next. Def Leppard, who knows?
Yep.
Who knows who's going to come in? But what do you guys think about letting everyone in? Sorta.
Oh,
That's Kristen's refrain.
that's my refrain.
Motto.
Let them all in.
Let 'em
There's
all-
room for everybody.
Let
It
God
doesn't
sort 'em
matter.
out, right?
It literally does not matter. There is not. It's there. It's an ephemeral institution. It doesn't truly exist. Put them all in. I don't care.
But Joe has
Joe-
statistics. He's got
Joe has
the
more
categories.
reverence.
Yeah.
I would like to think if there's a lot of people who think someone should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they will probably get in. I just, there's often conspiracies that people espouse, and a lot of these conspiracies revolve around acts who eventually get in. There was for a long time, Kiss were like, they just don't like us. The Rolling Stone crowd, Jan Wenner, in fact, they hate us. They hate our guts, and they would never let us in their institution. And they were inducted in 2014. It's
And they were like, "Thank you so much. We're
Right.
so
yeah,
honored."
they showed up. So it's just like there's no conspiracies, and like a lot of artists are going to get in. It just takes time. If you put all of them in at once, it kind of loses its meaning.
Then it's over, and we don't have to.
That's the end of the
Got
month.
it anymore.
Kristen finally go to sleep.
Yeah.
I think that was how Rush fans felt.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Like Motley Crue will probably get in, but
Do
they're
you
like,
think so?
probably, but
You
they're
know
like,
what? I
we're
feel
a
like-
band.
Yeah.
They won't let us. We're too dangerous. It's like, no, you're not. You just
You're
guys-
like, not
you guys just
anymore,
aren't
my
that
friend.
great.
No one's afraid.
The Sex Pistols notoriously did not appreciate their induction into the ceremony. They only had one out. There was no longevity there.
Right? Yeah, no, absolutely not. But like you talk about like any
Influence.
list of the great albums,
Right.
any list from anyone. It's never mind the bollocks is always on there. You know what I mean? And you think about the bands that started, like the Go-Go's famously, like, were inspired almost by seeing the Sex Pistols and being like, oh, we can be fucking better than that. Are you kidding me? So like, I mean, like, so, but the other thing about the Sex Pistols is like,
Johnny Rotten, wearing the MAGA hat and shit. It's like point Rock Hall, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, I think
like, oh, you're a rebel and you love Trump. Okay, cool, great. Well,
and also it's like one of those things where people think they're being so rebellious by not attending, and they're just like, oh yeah, screw the Rock Hall, who cares, la la la. And it's like, now Todd Rundgren's fans are going to be robbed of watching him bang the drum.
Yeah,
give a gracious speech.
Yeah,
and like his family.
Yeah.
Like, think about like your kids and your wife who would love to go and see you be inducted. They would love that. And like, what point are the point of like the rebellious, I'm not going to go to my own induction, I feel like, especially over time, has really dissipated. Yeah. Like, I think it has lost the thread. It almost feels like remnants of that, like, I'm not putting my music in a commercial.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was just about to say. It's like, because we live in a post-sellout society. Mm-hmm. I think we've talked about this on the show before, but it's like, yeah, I don't think that younger generations are like, oh yeah, I Shazammed that song in a commercial. That's how I found out about this band. Yeah. They do not see it as selling out. They think that like they have grown up so much with like product placement and with kind of like the intersection of music and commerce as just like obvious and intertwined from the jump. And so I just feel like that kind of attitude, which is not, it's like, the purity of like not selling out is over. It's just is over.
You're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
At that point, I believe, I get it back in the day, but like, I don't know. It's
that was a Gen X attitude.
It really was. And like, I think that was kind of like the last remnant of like, yeah, we'll never sell out. And it also means that we'll never be rich. And millennials were like, we love money.
Yeah, right.
It's funny that you just made the point that this is actually even part of their discovery now. Music and commercials.
Oh,
part
yeah.
of their discovery for kids, which is so weird, especially for our generation.
Oh, oh yeah. And like connecting it back to the Rock Hall, people will undoubtedly discover Todd Rundgren through his induction, through 100%. Him being inducted on this big HBO ceremony. And it's like, dude, go. Like people are going and he's going to, it's not going to have the full effect because he's not going to be there to perform. Like, but even without that, he's going to benefit from it.
Yeah, the Rock Hall bump.
The Rock Hall bump. It happens.
It's real
enough.
It's real. And like, but the ultimate irony is that whether he rejects it or not, the title Rock and Roll Hall of Famer is going to follow him for the rest of his life. Yeah. He does anything noteworthy. When he dies, it's going to say Rock and Roll Hall of Famer in the headline. It's going
first line of the obituary, always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Because it is such a superlative. Loath as I am. I mean, it's going to be, in Joe Elliott's obituary. It's going to be, it's like it's
a signifier.
Yeah.
And it's a clean signifier of this person made a significant impact in rock and roll.
What do you know about Joe Elliott? Is he okay? What's going on? What's happening there?
Oh, no.
Do we have eyes?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm starting to worry.
I think it's like going to make it like makes it so that more people will run the story when you die.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Not to really put too morbid a twist on it, but it
is. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We're all newsflash. We're all going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Holly's not, but
that's right, Holly.
Yeah.
We're gonna live forever, like Fame.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame podcaster.
Exactly. That's
Kristen
what's coming
Studard
for us. I hate it.
Murdered Joe Kwaczala.
Murdered Joe Kwaczala.
After the 10th Foo Fighter episode.
Yeah.
No more Foo Fighter episodes, please.
Yeah, it was Foo Lie of 2045. She couldn't handle it anymore.
All right. Yeah. So where do you see like the Rock Hall, like in 10, 15 years? Do you see like Death Cab for Cutie or, I don't know, Korn?
That's an interesting one.
Korn.
These are strange ones that I would not think.
I live for a day that Korn is on the ballot. Dave Matthews Band is on the ballot. So it's just, I'm like, I don't know if you want to talk about like late 90s, early 2000s.
Korn has been eligible for the past few years.
Have they really?
Yeah.
What year?
Because
Oh, I guess-
they were put. Yeah.
What year are we in? Holy crap!
I know.
I can't.
I mean, Jay-Z and the Foo
Simply-
Fighters are getting in this year. And like, we will see artists that became eligible in 96.
So will
Yeah.
NSYNC go in? By the way, because that's
No,
coming
but
up.
Timberlake probably will.
You don't think
I
NSYNC
could
or
see that.
because
I don't
they
think the Rock Hall will ever embrace boy bands like that. I don't see.
Do you
that
think
happening.
Britney will get in? I mean, I feel like if Madonna's in, I feel like Britney could get in.
well Taylor Swift for sure.
Yeah,
I think
it's
Taylor
Taylor
Swift
for
will be in,
sure.
for
And
sure.
the difference between Taylor and Britney, I think, is the kind of artistry versus
it's-
product kind of thing.
yeah.
It's that's shifting. That conversation shifting a little bit.
She is
But
a
I don't know if-
songwriter. She writes her own songs, so I think that's
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily write your own songs, but I think about Britney. And
I mean,
even
like
think
Madonna didn't write her own songs, but she was
Yeah,
like
she did.
I am sorry. Didn't mean to say it like that. She wrote many of her own songs, but I guess what I'm saying is like Madonna is known as a performer and like an icon. And I feel like, okay, so like Whitney didn't write her own songs, but she's a great song interpreter.
Right.
Britney is more of a great pop star. And I
Right.
don't
And
know if we're
think
there yet.
I don't think the Rock Hall is celebrating that. I think you need something like a great voice, or you're doing something kind of like daring or challenging artistically. I think about Janet Jackson, who like her albums and like the concepts she was dealing with and the way that she challenged even just her own family, like this kind of stuff that she was dealing with thematically, and she evolved and she had longevity. I guess we'll have to see once Britney becomes eligible, which will be relatively soon. But like,
yeah, and who knows what's gonna? I mean, her conservatorship is gonna end, so she's free. Jake,
Yeah, she got her documentary. She's got a number of
exactly. She's had so many
Yeah, that's
documentaries.
true,
Now,
yeah.
if that mattered, she'd be in.
So when Justin is in the Hall of Fame and then he calls and says, "You know what? Lance Bass should be in the Hall of Fame."
what about
That's-
my guys?
What about my guys?
They're
What
not
about
even his guys. He doesn't care about them
No,
anymore.
he
He'll
doesn't.
try to get the Lonely Island in before he tries to get them in.
Oh, that would be great. By the way, okay, Weird Al,
Weird Al, Joe.
please,
Yeah.
please.
Weird Al. We have not done an
Longevity,
episode
hello.
we've not done an episode on Weird Al. I bet we will
I think we
at some
will.
point.
And I bet I know
but-
who we'll talk to.
And here is my kind of preview of what I would say in a Weird Al episode, which is that I think Weird Al gets in the Comedy Hall of Fame. I don't think he gets in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think he is more significant as a comedic force than he is in terms of the quality of his music. I think the appeal of Weird Al is you buy his records because they're funny. And what he does is funny. And you might be able to say, and I would even say this, some of those non-parody tracks are actually really good. But that's not the impact of Weird Al. The impact of Weird Al is not on his significance to the progression of rock and roll or music.
He gets in the Polka Hall of Fame. He gets in the Parody Hall of Fame.
And also, if it was, and sometimes we talk about like sometimes the Rock Hall feels more like the recording industry Hall of Fame. If that were what it was called, yes, for sure, you put Weird Al in the record business Hall of Fame because of his impact selling records and making records that people loved. But it's really not about the music with Weird Al, which I think is what will likely keep him out. And I just think about any artist that is not that came before Weird Al or were part of Weird Al's era, and he gets in before them. It's like,
I know. I'm just like Weird Al gets in. You're like
there
not
are
me.
hundreds of artists that it would be so disrespectful to
Weird
put
Al is in.
before
Pat
them.
Benatar's still not in.
Like Jesus, yeah.
Start punching people.
So that's my take on Weird Al, who is the artist that got me to buy records. Yeah,
Really?
that's how significant he is to me.
I
Yeah.
hear
But-
that. I get that.
I have to be objective, which is kind of part of what we try to do on
Just
the
made
show.
politicians' hands.
I
at
know,
the
he
page.
really
Yeah, I
did.
do that for fun.
At the
yes.
camera.
But that's
I
what
have
we
to
try
be
to do
objective.
on the podcast.
Wow.
As I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, LL Cool J Music Excellence Award. He could have been Performer Award. And as much as I love Carole King and Tapestry, could that have been switched around, or what do you? What
She
do
was
you?
already in.
She
as
has.
a
He's already in as a songwriter
So what? I mean,
non-performer.
okay,
in a
The whole
non-performer
point.
category.
The whole point of her induction this year is to acknowledge her as a performer.
okay.
Because her talents as a songwriter with Jerry Goffin have been acknowledged for 30 years. She got in 1990 as a non-performer when they inducted her as a songwriter, Jerry Goffin. But one of the sticking points is Carole King had a very, very significant and influential career as a performing artist, as someone who performed that music. And it felt like the Hall was being kind of stubborn about that. Like, no, she's already in. Similar thing with Tina, not exactly the same, but she's in with Ike. And the only part of her career that was technically acknowledged by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is her music with Ike, which is significant. Carole King's songwriting, also significant. Both of these got in very early on in the Rock Hall's history, as they should have, because you can't overstate the importance. But both those artists had very significant careers as performers on their own, and it was time to finally acknowledge that.
Yeah, to call Carole King a non-performer, it's just like ludicrous. And it doesn't. Now, ludicrous, do we think ludicrous someday?
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm gonna reach and say no.
I think Missy Elliott, though. I think she'll get in. I would be disappointed if she
okay.
didn't.
Yeah.
As we touch on this, there's a lot of women that it took a long time for them to get recognized, and there's still a lot of women that are not in the Rock Hall. What do we think about this?
I have not noticed that. I don't have
No, go ahead.
Oh, that's
You have the floor, Kristen. Would you like to?
Well, it's ridiculous and I'm angry about it. We have been conditioned to see incremental progress as enough, and it's really not. I say this a lot about kind of female performers and performers of color, non-white performers. It's like we could do better and we should do better. And I think one of the only ways to do it is to just start tilting the ballot. Don't give us any more, all white male options. And let's get Pat Benatar in the dang Rock Hall yesterday. Thank you. Also, in the list of women who have been snubbed by the Hall is long and it is egregious. And in some cases, the ways that they have been systematically neglected and excluded, it is obvious. You look at a lot of people who were incredibly formative and important, and their male counterparts have been inducted and they have been excluded. And yes, this year we had a more diverse ballot. We had more women getting in, and a lot of that had to do with the Go-Go's, being an all-female band. But that's still, what's the percentage, Joe? We did a history episode.
Yeah, we went through and kind of tracked how the percentage of women, went back and forth, and we're about 7%. If you're looking at especially individual members, because you have to remember, and the reason we do individual members, obviously the number would be larger if we were just talking about acts, like the Go-Go's as one act, and then the Cure as one act. But we counted individual members because that's important, because the individual members who are inducted get votes. Votes are the thing, more than anything else, that matter for who gets inducted. And we just talked about how we liked the year 2019. You get Stevie Nicks and Janet Jackson get in. Stevie Nicks already had a ballot because she was in with Fleetwood Mac. So you get one new woman who has a ballot. Now, who else do you get? 10 people in The Cure, like 6 people in Def Leppard, 6 people in Radiohead. You get 6 people in Roxy Music. And when I say people, we're talking about like the last few bands, like these are guys. You get guys. You were getting more and more men who are voting, and obviously not all men are going to just vote for all men. But it is just a trend generally that people vote for people who are like themselves, and it is a problem with women, and that I think was one of the big problems with why Tina and Carole couldn't seem to get a second induction when Eric Clapton was inducted 3 times, and then it's the same thing with why we see a lot of the same genre get inducted. The guys from Journey who are now voting probably going to vote for the dudes they went on tour with and the music they like, which is going to be similar to the music that they make.
Let's go Foreigner.
Yeah, for example, Foreigner.
Probably will happen.
It will probably happen.
There is, and it's, I would like to see it was cool to see the Go-Go's get in because now we have 5 women who are now voters. And it would be cool to also see, we haven't seen this in a very long time, a group of black musicians who are in a band together, like say Kool and the Gang or the Commodores, do a little bit of work to get more than just your kind of token one black artist. And we've seen in recent years, it's one of the reasons why we really push for Dion's induction, and we try to push for people to vote for Dion. A lot of the black artists in the last few years, they've been posthumous inductions. And like that has to stop. That absolutely has to stop. It's an important thing. And people follow different ways in this, but we feel very strongly if you can induct someone while they're still alive, you should absolutely do that.
That'd be very interesting to see the impact next year of the Go-Go's. See what happens, if anything, because your top 5 votes, that's significant.
That's half the amount of votes that happened on our show.
Yeah, right.
And I almost burst into tears when I found out that Tina Turner was nominated this year. I had, I think the word is conniption on our show. He reveals the nominees to me live every year. He reveals who's getting in. He reveals the nominees and the inductees every year to me live. I find out on air. And when he revealed that Tina Turner was nominated solo, I had a full conniption. And yet I recognized without a doubt that she was getting in. She was going to be number 1 vote getter. There's just no way she wasn't getting in this year. And so I was out there trying to tell people not to vote for her, which is weird, but strategically and good for the hall for us to move those votes to somebody who needs them. And that is going to help diversify the hall in a different way because Tina's getting in.
So what can we expect in your the live show? What's going to happen? Who are you inviting? Who's going to be on your show?
I know. We have a special guest or guests TBA, and we are going to try to do something special with it. You know, obviously it will have the elements of our show that we think are the most dynamic, but we also realize that is a live show. So I think there will be bonus features. Bonus features and content. Maybe we'll have, in the early days, we used to play games on our show. And I wonder I bet that'll come back in for a live show. You might expect some sort of game element. And, we're still in the process of figuring this out, but we really want to make it like a very fun experience to come and see us live. And it won't I don't want it to just be 2 people sitting at a microphone just talking. Will you be singing, or is it like a TED Talk? You'll be strapped, pacing the stage back and forth with your PowerPoint. Doing crowd work, got a deck live, ready to go. In this COVID era, if I can really just get in people's faces, wouldn't that be great? You can find all about it at joekwazala.com. If you can spell it, you can. If you can earn your right in. Yeah, if you can spell it, you can see him. Wow. The tag? Wow, that's the tagline. I like that. I'm performing, but I'm all over the place. I am performing and I'm all over the place. And you can quote me on that. And if you go to hellokristen.com, maybe I'll update it someday. I was gonna say, if you haven't seen, I think you should leave and you jump into that first episode. I'm in the first episode, the third scene. One of what some people call the best sketch of that show. People really love. It was ranked Baby of the Year #1, and I judge the Baby of the Year, and I do also threaten to kill myself on live television. It's an absurdist comedy show. Mm-hmm. And you guys are also proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, aren't you? We sure are. Yeah, who cares about the Rock Hall is on Pantheon, and we're sisters. Was it sister podcast? We Lilas. Yeah, we Lilas. We're in the family. We see each other at all of the family events, at the barbecues. Kristen, have you been to the Rock Hall? Have you been in the building? I went one time 2 years ago. I had an abbreviated visit, much to Joe's chagrin. I had very specific instructions on how to do it, and I did not listen. I walked around. I thought it was cool. I think I'll like it more this time around because I'll be have. There. Oh. Is that why? I don't know. I think it'll. We'll probably go with like a fun little group. I think we'll go with a fun little group, and I think it'll be fun. And I know that you get into the Rock Hall free if you have a band. Do you think you get into the Rock Hall free if you have a podcast about the Rock Hall? This is a great question. We can.
I think we're going to find out.
We can pretend we're a band.
Yeah. Make up some, create
our
some
logo
credentials.
looks like a CD cover.
Also, it's possible that I could just like talk to some people at the museum.
Yeah.
And just like
We have enough connections now.
We talk.
It's true.
It's a whole different ballgame, baby.
I would think they'd be paying you to come.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Free promotion. Come on.
You, us, and my mother. My mom is always like, she's like, wait. So my mom thinks that we should knock on the, on the glass of the Sirius XM station that broadcasts from the Rock Hall and be like, we have a podcast. Do you mind if we go live?
Shut up. Let me get off that chair. Let me sit down.
Hey, Scram, we've got some thoughts. Yeah, that's, it's like when your family is like, hey, have you thought about being on Saturday Night Live? You should do that.
That's why we love family. Last person, the Ahmet Erdogan Award, Clarence Avant, who brought us such great bands as Gallery. But I think I think he's known as the Black Godfather, which I guess is kind of cool.
If you want to know the significance of Clarence Avant, watch The Black Godfather on Netflix. And
it is absolutely inspirational. Made me such a fan of who he is in a business that is so cutthroat and about profit. And he acts like he's a guy who's all about money, but he is truly concerned with uplifting Black people in business and seeing that they get their fair share and get their due. It's like he's an incredible, his story is really incredible. Watching that documentary made me an absolute convert and total fan of his. I'm like very into him getting in.
Yeah,
especially considering the number of dicks that they have put in that category. Just absolute out and proud, and I'm an asshole and I love it, kind of guys that they have put into that category. To have someone who has made such an impact for Black people in the industry, it's like, I love it. I'm all for it.
Yeah. And you will not be able to really understand his significance if you read a Wikipedia entry. It's like the movie really gets to the heart of what he's really about. Because on paper, like you said, if you look at what his label did or whatever, you're not going to really get the full picture.
Yeah. Well, that was exactly what I did. Usually I will see these names and I will look it up on Wikipedia. Like, what is this guy? Mm-hmm. And Wikipedia. I
watch that doc.
I am
it's
going
very great.
Oh, that's great. That's our pick to click this week.
There you go.
Okay, well, thanks, Joe and Kristen. This was wonderful, and happy Toddtober, or I'm sorry,
Toddber. I just think it's a more awkward.
In the spirit of being clunky, October, I guess, would be better, but Toddtober, I just couldn't.
Wow, you heard it here first. He did say my pun was better for being worse. I nailed it.
You did, but Toddtober just kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah,
in a way that I would like to. Then that'll be our last theme month, and let's acknowledge Todd Smith is LL Cool J, so it's not just Todd Rundgren.
It's not just Todd.
Oh, that's
Rundgren.
true.
We've covered a multitude of.
And the ladies do love Todd Smith, I believe.
Yeah, LLTS.
A multitude.
Oh God, we have to stop.
Keep going.
This podcast has to
simply must go. We simply must go.
All right. Well,
I think I should leave.
All right. Well, this is like your Christmas this month. So thank you for taking time out and getting on our podcast. And it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Fun to meet you. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
And enjoy your time in Cleveland. And we can't wait to
will.
Yeah,
we're really looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having us. We appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, you guys.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so we touched on Tina Turner, Carole King, the Go-Go's, Jay-Z, Foo Fighters, Todd Rundgren. As Tina Turner might say, they were simply the best. Joe Kwaczala and Kristen Studard of the Who Cares About the Rock Hall. I enjoyed myself. Did you enjoy yourself with these people?
That was simply the best. It was quite informative for me.
The Go-Go's might say I was head over heels over this episode. I believe, as Dave Grohl might say, they brought out the best of you, Holly. So congratulations.
I'm so glad you used a Foo Fighters song, just because they are worthy.
I know how you feel about the Foo Fighters. So.
I know you do. Thanks for letting me get that in with them.
Of course. New episodes every Friday. Who is the Rock Hall inductee that will be on our show next week?
Next week, we're going to have Gina Schock on the podcast, and I could not possibly be any more giddy or excited about that.
Wonderful. You got the beat. You got this. All right. With this episode with Joe Kwaczala and Kristen Studard, we're going to have a number of clips that Holly posts. Where can they find these clips?
Just check us out on YouTube and all social media, WDDIM Podcast, and on YouTube at What Difference Does It Make?
Thanks to Joe and Kristen for joining our podcast. They are also members of the Pantheon podcast family. All right, let's end it. Until next week, this is Dave.
This is Holly.
Check you later.
Over and out.